Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Mad Hatter. Yeah, I figured that I've been given a lot of opportunities to respond to people via comments about how I made Nature the Threat. But I thought, doing a screen capture would be helpful just in terms of kind of explaining my thought process when I was making this. So let me go back. So it started straight up 2 years ago when I started to think about blacks in history. So I started to build out this thing. This is a mind map here. This is how I take all of my notes. And started to really start digging into like what happened and when. And a lot of this really took place, to be honest with you, when Trump got in to power, because then I started to realize something was really off with the world. But anyway, what I ultimately ended up doing was at first I tried to use an analogy based off of the Matrix. So as I started to like go down this list of, some of the most iconic scenes from the Matrix, it started to line up pretty nicely with the timeline of when things went down in the U.S. So I started to think, this is before the Wachowski brothers, or now sisters, mentioned that there's an allegory transsexuality in the Matrix. So I was like, maybe this is actually about slavery in America. So here you'll see I started with slavery back in 1619. Actually, I dialed it back to the African diaspora back in the 1500s, the 1800s, and then just started to build it out. So you see it goes all the way down to government-backed slavery, racial bribes, civil war, abolishment of slavery. And then here we've got another, this was, the Agent Smith talking to Mr. Anderson about you being a plague and we're the cure, and realizing that there's a lot of tie-ins to what happened with the black codes back in like the mid 1800s. So anyway, yeah. So that was kind of my first tie-in to slavery, and I was like, you know what? Let me dig a little deeper and try to figure out and fill in some of these blanks, because a lot of these things you hear about just in passing. It's not in history books or anything like that you get taught in school. So what I did was, let me pan out a little bit. I started to do some research, and my research took me to a number of books. The books that I have highlighted here and that I also put on the site a little earlier, these are the ones in particular that really started to like narrow my focus and really help kind of set the stage for this song. First was White Rage. Next was How Democracies Die. The other is Ebony and Ivy, which is really more about like Ivy League schools and their history with slavery. So I didn't use too much of that, but it was definitely an inspiration. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, which him explained it to his son about racism. Dark Alliance, this is one where we talk a lot about, and I think this is in the third or the fourth verse, where I really start talking about, the coke epidemic, and that was directly influenced by this Dark Alliance book. Then The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. He's a lawyer. This was also very influential, especially as I start talking about redlining and things of that nature that came from that book. So, and then there are a ton of other things that kind of tied in and were based on audiobooks, also a combination of YouTubes. There are a couple of interviews with people who had their houses taken away from them in Chicago, what Ta-Nehisi Coates actually did an article on in The Atlantic. So anyway, there are a number of different data points here that essentially led to me coming up with a more filled out version of this mind map with dates. I also have an Excel spreadsheet that I tied back to this mind map, because I also wanted to do something that talked about how we would calculate reparations would look like if we knew the amount of damage that was caused in each one of these areas over the years leading to today. So at any rate, this is kind of how, and I won't get into too much detail. Maybe I'll post this a little later so you can like dig into all of the little details and where I got all of this. But I think I was able to form the right balance between giving information, but also creating a song that flowed. And that was really the intention of the song. So anyway, I hope you like it. I hope you like what I just went through. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up, and I'll do my best to do a deep dive on it. All right, yo.